Thank
No
you.
problem.
Got it.
Got it.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay.
And
We'll
you're now
call
live.
the meeting to order then. I don't know how you want to run the meeting, Jennifer, whether we
Well, we've
just
got,
have questions or,
well, we have to approve the agenda first, Madam Chair. So
right, yes. We did have the agenda. Can we-
I vote for approving the agenda. I'll move that.
Second?
Second it.
Okay, John, all in favor then? Good.
And I've heard back from our website coordinator, who is our teen librarian, and we have not received any deputations or presentations or public participation information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the two documents you have before you are the
Spreadsheet,
spreadsheet and the budget notes.
right.
And I've looked at these so many times that I don't even remember what they say anymore. So I will refer to my budget notes. You feel free to, unless you want to do it differently, Madam Chair, I'll review the budget notes and then anybody can ask me questions if you've got some.
Okay,
Okay, so whenever we do this, the township gives us the spreadsheet from the previous year. So you don't have to recreate all the numbers. And they also give us assumptions. So they'll tell us for this time period each year what the expected increase for wages is, what the expected increase in utilities, the utilities assumptions, usually the energy assumptions, the gas is a little different from the rest of the utilities, and inflation rates. So we then take that into consideration when we're creating the numbers that you see before you. Right, so that's all been thought out. My well, we've talked to the province. I do sit on the Federation of Ontario Public Libraries board as a representative for the Rural Caucus, and there's been discussion between FOPL and the province with regards to the provincial operating and pay equity grant, and these are not expected to change in 2022. I can also tell you that today I received notification from our ministry that they are not going to give us any money for laminating and photocopying vaccine receipts or later QR codes, even though I asked them on behalf of all libraries in the province to do so. So despite the fact that they're advertising that you can get it done at your library, they're not willing to help pay for it. Our federal grant that you'll see in the spreadsheet for the budget is the Canada Summer Jobs Grant that we apply for every year. We were approved for it in 2020, but that was a pretty wacky year and we decided not to hire summer students. We did hire them this year and we will continue to hire them regardless of what the state of emergency is going forward. And you will see a difference in the calculation, and that's based on the changes that have been approved by the province to what's the base wage? I'm going to talk about the minimum wage. Okay, so it goes up every year or two, and so I've calculated that in. Because when we apply for the grant, we apply as a charity. We are a registered charity, and we receive the minimum wage. We then top it up a few dollars an hour for the students, or else you wouldn't be able to attract anyone. But we've been very lucky so far. User fees. Okay, I have assumed with the way the board has talked, and I know we haven't presented the budget to council, but I'm sure if you want, we can include this in there. I have not included fines, and I have not included the DVD waiver insurance. Okay, so I've just eliminated them. We have not charged them in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. We've managed to move along anyways. We know that these things are encumbrances for many in our population that we serve in terms of using our resources. Certainly fines are because, people don't come back when they get enough fines if they can't pay for them. But so that's up to you whether you want to move forward with that. But from everything you've talked about in the last 2 years, I think probably you do want to eliminate those budget streams or revenue streams. You would still be, Bob has a question. Okay.
Should we be looking at making a separate motion
with respect to fees at this point outside the budget?
You can certainly do that. That I think makes a lot of sense. Because if that is the will of the board to remove those two things, then you probably should have a motion stating that, and then you would move the budget as a whole.
So while it's fresh in our minds, then I would so move.
Second that.
Okay.
All in favor? Okay.
Okay, that is fantastic. So that revenue stream, those revenue streams have been taken out, but we still, normally when we laminate things or provide lamination pages to people, we do charge for that. We charge for photocopying, we charge for faxing. We actually, well, the last 2 years have been garbage, but in a normal year, in 1 month, we would make enough from the faxing that we do in the 3 branches to cover one of our telephone bills. So it's not an insignificant amount of money, and it helps pay for the service. So there's still revenue streams coming in. We do get general donations coming in. And of course, people lose books and we end up with money from that. So it's not like you're not bringing in any revenue. Yes, Bob.
You're muted, Bob.
You're muted, Bob.
Bob, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Since we have been talking about lamination, and we heard some big numbers there, 600 odd was. What kind of money are we talking about as far as our costs for that?
So far, it's less than $1,000. And I've talked to Collingwood Public Library, and they're doing this as well. And they're going to continue to do it, I think, until October 3rd or 4th. And I think by the 2nd or 3rd week in October, since the QR codes are, well, when are the QR codes coming out?
In October sometime.
Okay, so I would say give them a week after the QR codes, and then I would say, okay, we'll print them for free because you're not losing much money on that, but we're no longer laminating for free. You can pay us the actual cost for that process. So I'd like to continue to do it for now. I mean, it's more time consuming than the cost of the materials at this point. But I do see it as a public good. It's bringing people into the library that don't use the library. And I think we will see some of them coming back as patrons. And I think when we're still doing fundraising, and I know we're not incredibly active doing that right now because of the pandemic, but I think it will stick in people's minds when they're thinking about where they should, put their charitable dollars. So to my mind, Bob, I think we should continue to do it until, maybe a week after the QR codes are out. And then everybody's had an opportunity. And if they haven't, because we have people coming in who couldn't afford to even give us a couple of dollars for this, but they recognize that they need it.
Okay, that's fine. I just wondered what kind of an impact it was having on us now, and whether or not we would have to do some specific fundraising to cover it, and that we weren't collecting anything on it.
So the biggest impact is staff are running off their feet, but it's a short-term thing. A lot of staff have had a lot of stress, and I'm sure those of you who are still working have seen that in your own workplaces, that there's a lot of stress related to the pandemic going on and on and on. So there's that. But this is short-term, right? We're not going to continue to do this forever, and people aren't going to be coming in droves forever. But we can pull this. And the other thing is, if the province has specifically said they're not going to give us money for this, but they have given the municipality money to cover COVID related costs. And to me, this is a COVID related cost.
Yeah, for sure.
We're providing a service that's directly related to COVID. Yes, Mary?
You have the next one, the little.
Can't hear you, Mary.
Can you get closer to your mic, Mary?
Sorry. All right. Sorry. All right. This isn't working. I've got my papers here. We also have an opportunity maybe to fundraise to get some of that funds back if we can show some movies.
Well, we can't do that at the moment.
Can't do
No,
indoor
but
program.
once we do, if we had a, if we had a fundraising specifically to recoup some of our costs around COVID, it would be well received maybe by people too.
Going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's something, if I can get a little further in the budget, we'll talk about the movie license.
Okay.
So those are, okay, so there are user fees, but you've decided not on those two. Your worship, the board has passed a resolution that after we had stopped fines and DVD insurance waiver fees till the end of this year, and the board has made the motion that will continue. Like for the rest.
Sounds great.
Right?
And if I may, Madam Chair, I apologize. I was waiting for my lift home. My car is in for service, and so I had to wait until my wife was finished work so that I could come home with her. Imagine, we were actually commuting together in the same car. It felt like 1970, you know what I'm saying?
And you made it
Anyway.
home alive.
Yeah. So there you go. I just got home now, and I wanted to log in right away. So thank you for allowing me to join.
Okay, so we're just going through the budget notes right now, Your Worship. Okay, so there's still some revenue streams coming in. Salaries. Now, for 2022, I have added $10,000 in there because virtual programming is not going away. And that's not to say that the pandemic isn't going away, because I hope to God the pandemic is going away, but we have seen a real uptake, particularly for our children's programs, for kits that we've been doing for a lot of people who, because of logistics, cannot get their kids to the libraries when the programs are timed. And I mean, we only have so many staff, so you can't satisfy everybody with the timing. But I don't think that's going away, and my staff can't continue to do this. They can't do in-person and kits as well for the same program. But if we then give some of my circ staff who would dearly love some additional hours, so we would split it up between those who don't have a lot of hours. Then we could, under the direction of the teen librarian and the children's librarian, we would have enough staff power to create the kits and ensure that the virtual programming that is in demand continues. So we've started that in 2022. You will see an increase in the pay budget, salaries and wages and benefits anyway, because of course, you've got people going up the step ladder in their pay scale. You've also got the cost of living increases, but that's the only significant increase. So we're looking at that to start in 2022. We're also looking at so I've worked with our current treasurer to do something a little different. And that's to put programming in as a budget line for salaries and wages. Because when our children's librarian, who works very little now and has worked very little now, she covers lunches and when we're stuck and things, but mostly she's doing programming. And so before the pandemic, she was working in the Stainer branch. Almost all of her hours will be charged to the Stainer branch. But when you're looking at that in the salaries, it gives you the impression that it costs a lot more to run the Stainer branch. Well, it certainly does cost more because it's our largest and it's our main branch. But when what she's doing is actually for the benefit of the 3 branches, it makes sense to have it instead of branch specific, which former treasurer Edward Henley came out with. I want to see what the branch costs for salaries, but I want to see what administration costs, we already have that in there, and what programming costs. Because it's very hard to get a handle on the cost of programming salaries if I don't have that split out separately. So that doesn't affect the overall cost of salaries in the budget, but it does affect how you will see it presented. Okay, so that is something that's changed from now going forward.
Are we allowed questions as we go along here?
Sure. What's up, Mary?
Okay, so I was just looking at the numbers and I was having a bit of difficulty under salary. When I looked at 2021 budget and then actual, because there was quite a bit of a difference, 189 versus 78. And so I did a 2/3. I looked at the date, August 4th, and then I figured out that 78 was 2/3 of the year. But when I make it a whole year, I come up with $117,000, which isn't anywhere close to 189. So I didn't know anything, how the figures worked is my question.
And I have to do all these pages at once. So, okay, when you're looking at 189, okay, so what you need to do is not just look at that one salary line. You have to add them all together because there's been some changes in where staff are currently working. We have split staff out so that the Stainer branch is segregated from the other two, so that if Stainer branch goes down with COVID, and hopefully only one person would have it, but the rest of us would have to be at home, the other two branches can continue to operate. Similarly, if New Lowell or Creemore went down, those branches would have to close, but we'd still have Stainer. So instead of where we had calculated some of the staff being in Stainer, they're now in other branches. So if you look, add all the figures up and then compare them to what the budget was, it's much more rational and close to what we had anticipated. And I've
I just did that now, sort of roughly, and I came out with instead of 651,000, I came out with 537,000. So
where we are now, you mean?
yeah, so I did the same 2/3. See at the bottom where it says salaries, wages, and benefits. I took that 651,780. I just left it at 651. And then I took the 357, left it rough, and divided by 2 because it's 2/3, and then multiplied by 3, and I got 537,000. I just, I was trying to see how it worked.
Okay. Oh, I don't think, even though the numbers are there and it says August 4th, I don't think it's as of August.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's just not quite accurate.
Yeah, I did review these with the township treasurer and she thinks we're pretty spot on. And she's going from what she's looking at when she looks at her screen. Right?
Okay.
Rather than she's going from what she looks at in her screen. Bob?
I think the numbers are a little closer if you do 7/12. Because I did that earlier today myself.
Yeah.
And we are actually under budget, but not by all that much. I think it was 51,000. I'm not sure. I can't remember now, but it was closer. And in this particular year, because of all the confusion with COVID, I think we kind of expect that our budget for wages are going to be a little upset.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But that's a good point. But yes, so hopefully next year it will make a little more sense.
Well, I'm sure there'll be something that makes the change there too, but sure, no problem.
So that's not too big of a deal.
Okay.
I have reviewed this numerous times with the treasurer at the township and she thinks we're okay. Facility rent, we do give the New Lowell United Church $400 a year, which is reviewed annually. So far, they haven't increased it, to utilize their facility. Now, obviously, we had thought we would go in there this fall, but we're not going in there this fall. But I would suspect that in 2022, we can go in. So we continue to have that money in the budget. There's been no real change to supplies budget lines, whether it's program, office, or collection. I mean, there's an inflationary increase, but we're not looking at major costs. Memberships, however, I have increased in 2022 because we're going to have another census come out shortly. And we expect that we will, the township will go over the 15,000 people mark, population mark, in which case we go up from $100 a year for the Federation of Ontario Public Libraries to $750 a year.
Whoa.
Which is a jump. I can tell you that there is now a committee of the Federation of Ontario Public Libraries that is looking at costing in terms of membership fees. So I've gone with what is current. It may be different. You know, we may not have to pay anywhere near 750, but you have to go by what is currently approved by that body. We certainly get our money's worth out of Federation. They're their primary purpose is advocacy and research. And the information that we garner from them, well, probably myself more than you, but in order to make informed decisions is really important. You don't want to be operating in a vacuum. And also the fact that they go and have the ears of the minister and the assistant deputy minister and the deputy minister when they are devising policies that affect us. So for example, when our two crown corporations, Ontario Library Service North and Southern Ontario Library Service, were being amalgamated, Federation of Ontario Public Libraries and the Ontario Library Association advocated very strongly with our ministry about how this could be done effectively. And what we have done has benefited. I mean, we couldn't change their minds and say, leave it as it is, we like it this way. But at least we had influence that helped them make decisions to provide us with a Crown agency that works a little better for us. So I certainly think we need to continue with the membership, but you do need to know that there's an increase coming. Performance programs. Well, we didn't renew the license in 2021, and I have not put it in 2022 because I really think we don't know what's happening just yet. If we need to move money around and maybe get it later in the year, then we can do that. But right now, the movies, if you buy the license, can only be shown on library property. So we could probably in Stayner show them in the community center. That was their plan, because the concept when we did the Stayner Library building project was that the community center would be available to the library as an extension of its programming facilities when we needed it for that purpose.
Mhm.
So it would fall within the guidelines of the licensing agreement. But you pay the license fee, which I think is around $1,500 a year, and it would only be for one facility. So I haven't put it in 2022. We don't have to decide on 2023. It's not a colossal increase. You could find the money. It's certainly when we look at 2023, we can go back and do that. But I really think that probably it wouldn't be into the fall of next year that we'd be looking at doing something like that anyways. And the reason being, even when we are allowed to meet in person, and I think Michelle will echo this, is that we see people coming in and they are, you know, we only let them stay in the library for an hour, but it's very few who want to stay for more than an hour. Most of them want to get their materials, they chat with us a bit, and they're out the door. They don't want to, they want to socially distance and they don't want to linger.
Mhm.
So I think we need to move in that direction, but 2022 isn't the year to do it. And you know, we can rob Peter to pay Paul in 2022 and not have some other kind of program if we want and do that. But there's money in the budget to be able to do that in 2022, but I haven't specifically increased that budget line to facilitate our regular the performance programs is when we bring people in or we have major events. It's not our normal programming in the libraries. So that's not there for 2022, but you can decide later if we're going to do that. But when we started looking at all this, one of the things that we did look at for the fall programming was not only the New Lowell United Church, utilizing that since we have an agreement with them, but also we wanted to go into the Station on the Green. And we certainly only ever go into these things if they don't have paid people coming in. And they said, well, you would have to pay this amount of money. Well, and we're not averse, we understand that, but the agreement, that was a gentleman's agreement that was come to back around 2000, was that we would not have to pay the hall boards if they didn't have a booking, because they were municipal property. And if we needed to utilize them for something, it would be available to us. So I know that the Station on the Green board was going to look at this. I'm sure they're not looking at it now because of the requirement for proof of vaccine for many things. And indeed, we have decided not to do in-person programming for the same reason. But at some point, I think we do need to sit down with the municipality and come up with a memorandum of understanding in regards to using the Stayner Community Center and also the hall boards. which is secondary because most of the time we don't need the hall boards. We have room in our own facilities, but we simply don't at this time. But that's just an information piece. That's really not part of the budget. But I think when we come back into our October board meeting, that should probably be a part of the agenda to start having that discussion. Everything's worked fine. And we're not having a conflict with any of the hall boards at all. But I do think going forward, we need something in writing that both sides can go to and say, well, this is what we agreed on. And so this is what we should do, or let's make an exception in this case. But, rather than people's vague memories about what was agreed on 20 years ago.
Well, and especially because, who knows when we might have to go to that documentation, right? Because, none of us might be there, or nobody who remembers this longstanding, gentleman's agreement.
Exactly. And at this point, Diane has been here since amalgamation. And of course, and even before that with Creemore Public Library, and I've been with the Stainer Public Library. So we've been around a long time and we remember all this stuff. But at some point, we're not going to be here. And that, it's just like whenever a longstanding town clerk resigns, there goes the history of the municipality walking out the door. When Bob Campbell left, there was a lot of information that you wouldn't even think you needed or wanted that retired along with him. So it's important to have documents like this just so that everybody knows where they stand. It's not getting on, whenever I talk about my mother, I always talk about her getting on her hind legs and fighting for everything. Well, that's not what we're doing here. We're just, coming to an agreement in writing saying how this is going to work. And I think that's totally acceptable. But that's for the October agenda, but I'm just letting you know that should be coming up. Software licenses are also going to increase. We have greatly increased the number of computers that the Stainer branch has. We've also come in with a software called PC reservation, so that when somebody books on, they don't just come and sign something at the desk. They are actually booked onto the computer for their hour, and it books them off at the end of their hour. It gives them warnings and everything. It's not like it just, all of a sudden everything you've worked on for the past hour is gone. But it's been a real boon for us. It also allows them to send print jobs to the printer. Sometimes it's problematic, but that's the same with every piece of software. And we're also moving forward with the Sprig performance appraisal system for all the staff except me in the library. And so there's a cost related to that. So that's where you'll see a slight increase in the software and licensing costs. There's no real increase in the small tools and equipment costs from 2021. Facility maintenance. Okay, so in 2021, when we were talking about this budget, we were talking to Parks and Recreation, and they have initially covered the costs of utilities and heat for the Stainer branch. Now, we've talked since then, how are we going to do this ongoing? And what I have recommended, and I believe is what's going to happen, is that for heat, we're going to keep at the same rate that we were paying, obviously with inflationary increases at the Stainer branch, because although the HVAC system at our new facility is much better and more efficient, it's a much larger facility. So it kind of equals out. And the utilities, we're also looking at, how do we break them down? Because when the building was designed, it was decided that we will not have separate metering for these things. So that's why you'll see a difference there. But what we have put into the budget for 2022 should cover all of that. Special projects. In 2021, the cost for COVID-related PPE expenditures was in this budget line, and I've included funds for it in 2022 because I think there will still be some costs related to providing PPE for the staff. And we do provide masks if people come in and they've forgotten to bring their mask, and things of that nature, and the extra cleaning that has to be done by staff during the day. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that's really standing out. Okay, so Stainer branch loan. Okay, so the Stainer branch debenture is coming this year. And I believe the township treasurer has brought it in at a 20-year. Right. So it'll be 20 years, not the 30 that we initially thought, but that's okay. So there will still be additional. There was 175,000 was going to be put aside every year to pay that off, but the actual cost is going to be much less. So that cost will go, and we're still going to be putting in at least 25,000 a year into our reserves, because we know that we're going to look at expanding the Creemore branch. And I believe that was 2025 that we're looking at doing Creemore. So we need to put some money away. And now I haven't put the actual cost for that project into this because 2025 is still a little away. I think in 2023, you should start looking at budgeting for that if we're still going to do it at that time. But it doesn't need to be in 2022 at this point. Just so you know, that's coming up. The loan for Sunnydale ends in 2023. Hallelujah. And going down a little further, okay. We did not include signage for the Stainer branch in the overall project. And I know, Bob, you had talked on a few occasions about how we need to move forward with branding. And one of the things we have to do is have our signs reflect our brand.
Mhm.
So that is, I've put money into the 2022 budget so we can start to move forward on this, because it's important. And it's not, we can accommodate some signage in our regular budget, but not to the extent that we need it in this. And we'll have to discuss as a board, and I'll have to garner some information, and we can do this in probably 2022. What kind of signs do we want? Do we want them hanging down? Do we want them on the shelving units? Because that will greatly affect the cost and how quickly we can get them. That's something you should keep in mind, is when we're doing anything like this. This is a whole pandemic for some industries has pushed supplies way out. So I think we have time to come up with a good thing, but you're all going to need to put your thinking caps on for that, about what you would like to see transpire in the Stainer branch. For 2022, I've also put in money to replace blinds in the Creemore branch. We replaced some already, but there are other blinds that we didn't replace, and the branch is looking really good. We got that equipment from Barrie Public Library and bought a bit the year before. And I just think when you walk in, the sight lines are better, and it looks better than it ever has. And we want to continue to make sure that it looks really good for everybody. So get blinds. And in 2023, we would like to replace the carpet, because we have not done that for some time. Yes, Bob?
In as much as we probably are going to be looking at doing some major work on the east wall of Creemore branch, we should consider keeping our budget for blinds to as low as we can, because they may no longer be used on that wall.
Okay. Well, $2,000 is, I mean, I need to tell you it's in there, but I don't think whether we spend it or don't spend it, it's going to be my big thing. And I was not thinking about that, is if we are looking at doing an addition a few years out from that, should we hold off on the carpet? Because wouldn't you redo the carpet at the same time as you put on the addition?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bob, would you recommend that we remove that?
I would suggest we do. I don't think, it's been a while since I've been in Creemore branch, and I think we could probably stretch the life out on it for the time being.
For the carpet.
For the carpet.
Okay, and I don't need you guys to make a motion on that. If you're all in agreement, then it will be part of the revised budget for the library board. But so you're all comfy, cozy with removing with the understanding that we intend to have an addition on there, and then why would you do it twice?
Right.
Okay.
And there aren't any major troubles with the carpet right now, right?
No, it's just starting to show its age.
Tired.
It's tired, but it can get a little more tired. And then we'll have, and it would also be nice if we put an addition on to have brands, same carpet throughout the whole facility.
Yeah.
Also, you have to close. How many times do you want to close, from a service position?
Yep.
Well, the other thing too is that if you change the carpet now, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to match pattern going forward.
Well, even if you could match it, one's going to look worn, even if it's not very worn
True.
compared to brand new. So yeah, if we're going to do, it's not coming up, it's not a tripping hazard. So we'll just remove it for now. Now for 2024, and again, this is pretty far out there. You could change that. This New Lowell branch's front doors. Now, for those of you who remember Joyce Smith, she was pretty adamant about, finishing the old doors and putting them on. But they're starting to look a little rough. And we could repaint them, but I'm telling you, if we had doors that were glass, and so we let more light into the building, and also better security sight lines for the staff, because let's face it, this is a one-person branch. And when they're back at the CERC desk, they're in some of the design of this was not perfect, right? Because they're back in a corner and can't get out. I would like them to be able to see what's coming towards them. And
Don't
when they're at the
disagree.
CERC desk, they can see right through to the front of the building.
I just want to make sure that it won't be a problem for birds. I'm not sure exactly about the flight lines because
We
I don't
can
have a
put
great
things
sense
up
of
here.
direction.
Yeah, okay. And we, the same thing is in the Stainer branch. I mean, there's huge windows everywhere. But if we found that to be an issue, we can put up decals that, still let some light in, but keep the birds. I don't know. I live in a dark hole and I had a bird hit itself so hard on a window that's recessed that he killed himself.
Yeah, it depends
So you
on
never know.
whereabouts they are in terms of the flight patterns for the birds. And, like if it's like they're like north-south, that the birds are coming through, where they would normally. Also, we used to have a feeder near a window. And so that was a problem because the bird would get too close to the window to go to the feeder and then see itself. And then it would think it was another bird and
Okay.
then get upset.
We certainly don't have feeders out front, but we've also removed the trees that were out front beside the doors because we were having those, what kind of spiders were they, Michelle? Wolf spiders,
Oh,
which
wolf
are poisonous.
spiders. Oh,
And
gross.
when we had Orkin come in, they said they're coming from these cedar trees, which are a natural home for them. And they're just accidentally getting into the library. But if you come in with your toddler and your toddler's sitting on the floor, you don't want to have a poisonous spider bite. So we removed the cedar trees 2 years ago. I think you approved that. So there's no reason for birds to be coming unless they're just, but we can put up some decals so that that's not an issue.
Yeah, it's something I talked to Luke about it with respect to the Stainer branch, and he assured me that that was part of the plan. They had considered that so that it shouldn't be an issue for the birds in terms of the placement of the windows and the light and reflection and so on.
So we'd certainly make sure that and I get that, and we'll do something so we don't have bird strikes. But
Right.
the big concern is the current doors need replacing. And it's not an immediate concern, but I would also, if we're going to replace them, let's replace them with something that, is a little more secure for staff.
Mhm.
Makes sense.
And I think, is that it? I think that's the major. Yep, I don't have any control over amortization that's put in by the township treasurer later on. So, and it really doesn't affect that's not really something that comes out of tax dollars anyway.
I have a little question about this section on insurance.
Yep.
I just wondered if you had increased it enough so that the overages from the previous years were going to be covered, because I know there must be an increase because of COVID, was there, or something?
No, the increase came because the buildings had been reevaluated.
Okay, okay. So I was just a little worried that maybe we weren't high enough on the insurance to cover the future costs. It isn't in yet this year yet, obviously, that you haven't had to pay it yet, but I just wondered if we needed to
As
put
I
a little
say,
higher
I've
there.
passed all this by the township treasurer, and these are the sorts of things she would catch better.
Oh,
even
okay.
than I,
All
because
right.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any other questions related to the budgets that? Well,
Bob?
yep.
Just looking at contracted services. There's been our year-to-date is 0.
Right.
Are we still in negotiations for contracted services with regards to the Parks and Rec negotiations, or are they separate?
We don't pay them anything. It would just be if they're going to, if we decide that they're going to charge us this amount for our the Stainer branches utilities or our gas, then that would be charged to our utilities or gas account. It wouldn't come under contracted services. That's like if you decided to do a system-wide service review, then you would have to get an outside consultant to do it, and that's where you would put that.
So why is contracted services 0 for this year-to-date?
Because we have no contracted services. You're not doing anything that has an outside consultant coming in.
Well, that doesn't include our cleaning and things of that nature.
No, the cleaner has a separate budget line.
It's on there.
And when we've been dealing with the door into the library, the Stainer branch, that's all
Yeah.
coming out of facility maintenance.
Oh, okay.
So
I was
these
just
are all
saying, yeah.
lines. When you do put in contracted services, that's like you're doing a major project that you have to get a consultant to come in and do. And that's where you would put that, because, like a service review, you're not going to do that every year. So you wouldn't have a budget line for that. Contracted services allows you to put in something like that. That's, a one-off, or maybe it happens every 10 years. If we put a budget line for everything that's going to happen 10 years, Kelly McDonald is going to decapitate me. So,
Mhm.
Are you going to sell tickets for that?
well, that might bring us up to our fundraising goal. Yeah.
Fundraising idea. No, that's great. I appreciate that. Okay.
So a little question that popped into my head then is, suppose we decided that we wanted to have the carpet in Creemore cleaned, that would go under that?
I would get our cleaning contractor to do that, and there's money in the budget for that. So yeah,
Okay,
that doesn't
so-
go to contracted services.
so the steam cleaning is sort of a regular thing already?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking if we're extending the life of the carpet, maybe we might want to throw something in there.
Yeah, I usually have them do it once a year at all the branches,
Mhm.
just to, and I wait till, if it's in the spring that we do it, then we make sure that the mud is all gone. And in the fall, if we're going to do it, we do it before the snow starts coming, because when it's
Yeah.
half snow and half slush, then we've got mud again. But yeah, that's built into our overall budget for those things.
Okay, all right.
Mayor Measures, did you have a question?
Yes, I do, Diane. Thank you very much. I was just wondering about that line. I mean, when Bob brought up contracted services, I looked and I see there's nothing underneath audit fees. So forgive me, I don't understand. Does this board or does your budget have a separate audit fee, or is that something that's simply handled by the municipal
Well,
treasury?
I asked the township treasurer, and she said, well, we're not charging you audit fees anymore. And I said, well, good. I won't put them in the budget.
Well, that's just wonderful to hear. I wasn't sure. I know that, to be honest, the municipality does pay significant audit fees to our auditor, and it's a responsibility we have, obviously, to the provincial government to do that. And I just wasn't sure if underneath the library board or the library responsibility, whether you had your own. So if it's being handled by our treasury, then I'm very comfortable with that. So thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions related to the budget? Bob?
Okay, so I will actually make a motion that we accept the budget with the minor changes that we've discussed for approval.
Okay,
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
thank you, thank you. Okay, that was the main part of our meeting then. Our next meeting is October 19th, virtually at 4 p.m. And I will send, that will include the job descriptions that I've had to revise and submit to the Township Human Resource Officer to facilitate the township-wide payroll and market value assessment reviews. She wanted them in July, so they're off, but you need to see what they look like. My position has, I can't remember. I don't think there's hardly anything in there that's changed, but a couple of the other positions have changed somewhat. I haven't put in any changes related to COVID because we know that this is not going to go on forever. So, you know, I don't expect that if staff's duties change because of an emergency and for the duration of the emergency, that that's something that should be changed in their job description. That's just other duties as assigned because it's temporary and it's for a specific period of time.
It's basically a redistribution of labor rather than any increase. Isn't that the way it works out?
Are you talking about the $10,000 to go into salaries in 2022?
Well, that's a small bump, but we're not looking at any major changes due to COVID per se.
No,
That's a minor.
it's a blip. It's a hideous blip and we wish it would blip away, but that's all it is. So it's not like anybody's over, their duties are going to change forever because of this.
Mhm.
And you don't want to go back and look at job descriptions every 6 months to see where we are.
Do we have an anticipated date of returning to regular hours?
As long as we're working in teams, by which our senior staff are 1 week in and 1 week at home, although Michelle and I tend to do that off a little more because we both need access to the building. And so we can segregate the two branches. And because we have to have more staff on if we can through the other days that we're open so that we can ensure that even with the capacity limits, we've got enough staff to make sure that people are wearing their masks, are social distancing, are not staying beyond their time limit. As soon as we don't have to do that anymore, then we will open again on Tuesday. And I can tell you right now that we chose to close a day, but we kept our hours for the other days. Most of the libraries in Ontario have chosen to reduce their hours. You know, so they're open the same number of days in the week, but the shorter hours. Well, if you look at our community, that just doesn't make sense. We have a lot of people who are commuting. And if we close, some libraries are closing at 4 o'clock. If you don't get home from work till 6 o'clock, how do you get to the library? How do you bring your kids in? You know, you can use this virtually, but our collection is sitting there unused for a major portion of our population. One of the reasons that both Stainer and Creemore are open till 9 and Sunnydale is open till 8 is because we had input from previous counselors saying that, you know, I'm hearing from the public that they can't get in. By the time they get home and feed their kids and want to go to the library, you're closed. So it was the board of that day's decision to extend the hours. And it is probably true that we're not at our busiest half an hour before we close, but I mean, it does also take staff time to ramp up to a closure. So that was the decision I took, was that, okay, we need that time, but instead of taking it away and making the library virtually unusable for a quarter to a third of our population, we will keep the same hours that we normally have on those days.
So in effect, we're waiting for the province to change the guidelines?
The province and the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, because as long as either and or both of them continue to say, the province right now is not saying you have a capacity limit of this, but they are, and so is the health unit saying you have to ensure this, this, and this are taking place. And I can't do it if I don't have enough staff in the building to ensure that that happens. So I have to steal them from somewhere because, you know, it's a little late in the year to go to council and say, we need an extra blah, blah, blah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just surprised they haven't asked you for vaccine passports for the library, for people coming into the library.
Okay, so this is a, okay, so you know, you think you know what my job is? Well, for the last 2 years, it's been COVID. So this is the big thing going on at our Simcoe and Muskoka level, but also throughout the province. And we've been advocating to our ministry to clarify some of these points. And we are now actively, as a group, advocating with our health unit, because there are instances where we should be asking for proof of vaccination. Now, we have gone around that because I have said there will be no in-person programming. And we have had people come and say, I wanted my kid tutored here. And I've said, well, you know, right now we're being told 6 feet apart. How do you tutor a kid 6 feet apart? So we're just not providing, we're not allowing that service, but partly also because we want the clarification. The CEO for Bradford West Gwillimbury Public Library just submitted a report on behalf of all of us to the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit yesterday. And it was 2.5 pages of saying, in this instance, we should be asking for proof of vaccination. In this instance, you shouldn't be asking us to do that. So when currently, unless we're, currently, if somebody's coming in just to use the library or to access the collection or ask us some questions or use the computers, there is no requirement, and we've heard directly from the ministry on this, for us to ask them for proof of vaccination. The question becomes, if there's a program, what constitutes a program? Some programs are exempt because they're seen as social services. So which of our programs are considered social services? If an outside group comes in and wants to use our meeting room or do tutorial work, or in Creemore, we often have parole officers wanting to come in and meet people, and we do that in Stainer too. And now with the tutorial rooms, wouldn't that be great? But is that a social service as far as the health unit is concerned? So there's all these answers we need to these questions before we can move forward on some of these. And my dog thinks I've talked enough.
Let's hope that you don't get into the position where we are going to be asked to take passports.
Well, I hope not, because I just don't have the staff to do that.
Yeah.
You know, there's not enough people in the building to facilitate that. But certainly the province has said, no, if they're just coming in to use the library collection as they normally would, or to access the computers or ask questions or advice on reading or anything, there's no purpose. I mean, they have to be masked, they have to fill out the form as they come in the building, but they don't have to provide proof of vaccination.
Right.
And I'm sure if you've gone into a restaurant or anything else lately, you will see that it creates a bottleneck.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it does, you know, you've got this extra step you have to go through. We currently don't have the staff for that. So I think we're doing really well right now.
Mhm.
And hopefully it won't last much longer.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. So I guess there are no more budget-related comments from anybody? We finished anyways that part, didn't we? Can we have yes, Connie?
I was just wondering if Mayor Measures knows that the library services is coming up at county tomorrow.
I certainly do, and thank you for bringing that up. I read the report actually just after communicating with Jennifer, and I am surprised as anybody. It is just coming up at the committee, the subcommittee, which is the review committee. The chair is Mayor Bifolchi from Wasaga Beach. And so obviously they will come forward with a recommendation that will then go to council. It's interesting to note that it did say that it would require 11 municipalities to participate to support option number 3. Not 16, it would require 11, which is not just 50%, right? It would require 2/3. So 11 municipalities who are voting members would have to support option 3 as presented. So we'll see how that goes.
You don't have a sense of how they're feeling, the other municipalities? Has anybody mentioned anything to you?
No, nothing. Nobody's talked to me about it yet, Connie, other than here at this house or at this table. But the unfortunate reality is that the whole service level review team has been tasked with asking really difficult questions. And so don't feel alone at the library, because the same question is being asked about fire departments. Same question is being asked about planning departments. You know, there are a lot of municipal services across the whole county, whether or not they would be more efficient to operate in a singular fashion, in a county-wide service. So the library is not the only one. It may be the only focus of this table, but from the county level, that's what they're doing, reviewing all the service levels. So, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
I actually like what you said about not in this house, because
Well, that's who you are. I mean,
we are
that's. I mean,
yes.
you're a group of volunteers, and respectfully, Diane, as the chair, this is a group of volunteers, and I have a great respect for the volunteers and the volunteer effort that goes on here to bring this board's business forward and serves this municipality well. So, you know, that's who you are. You're a house. You get to make some decisions, and you actually get to implement them. So that's how it works. Good job.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay, so we'll accept a motion to adjourn then, I guess. Mary, second, Bob? I guess. So we'll see everybody on the 18th, I guess it is.
19th?
19th, okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
See you next month.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was
Adios
great.
all. Stay safe.
Take care.